Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Michael Parrish, the Senior Vice President of Client Development here at Halo Therapy Solutions. And here we are, almost and quickly approaching the midpoint in December. Hard to believe that we are staring 2026 in the face, and we have another episode of Inside the Wellness Mind. I'm thrilled to have this gentleman on. I also have my colleague Jess Torres on today. We're doing something new, and I always believe in trying something new. So we're gonna bring in Jess today as well. So we have somebody that I was really thrilled to have on this program, and it took us a bit, but we have David Van Daff with us, and I just want to give a real brief, basically intro on David. So in January of 2024. I was contacted by Kathleen Ferguson. Those of you that know Kathleen, you know that she's this incredibly gifted, intelligent, driven, and now CEO and founder of Coach 360. At that point in time, Kathleen was with an organization called Athletech News. And during the holidays, Kathleen extended an invite to me for some reason in my brain. I thought that I was maybe one of only a couple of people that got the invite because it was such short notice. And the invite was to go up to New York City to attend a ceremony, or rather an event on the NASDAQ, and it was for Wellness Week, and it was to kick off the opening bell ceremony for Wellness Week. And Kathleen said, "Yeah, there's going to be a few people up here, and love to have you come up." And so, again, I don't know what I was thinking, but in my mind as I was flying out, I was thinking, "Oh, this is going to be great. There's going to be about 7 to 10 people there, and it's going to be a great event." But when I get there, I check in on the night before, and I believe at the Marriott Marquis, and I go down to the restaurant bar, and Kathleen said, "Come on down. There's going to be a few people there. I'd like you to meet them." And one of the folks that I met right out of the gate was David Van Daff, and Kathleen. It wasn't just like a casual invite. Kathleen was exceedingly excited about me meeting David Van Daff, and she didn't tell me much about David's title and what he does exactly. She just said, "Hey, you have to meet David because he's deeply respected in the industry. He's heavily tenured, multiple decades in fitness, and I'd love for you to meet him." So I met David, and then the very next day, all of us were surprised to see what I think was about 100 people or more that attended that event on just a couple days' notice. It exceeded all expectations, and it was an event that even today, when we think back on it, it was a very special day with professionals, colleagues, thought leaders from all walks of life and from many different types of businesses, particularly in fitness and in wellness. And one of those standouts was David Van Daff. David Van Daff is with the National Academy of Sports Medicine, and has a very interesting background. He's been in the fitness world for 30 years, but we're going to get into some of that here in a little bit. David, I just wanted you to know uh, from my heart, because I know I saw you most recently at another one of Kathleen's events. This is a true pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you so much for joining us.
Feeling is mutual, Michael. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna want to get into your background a little bit because I always love to, have our folks know who they're listening to. But if you could give the proper title, because I know that sometimes we don't give the proper title. What's your role at the National Academy of Sports Medicine, and then we'll start to unpack how you
Sure.
how you got there.
Absolutely. I am the Vice President of Industry Development and Public Affairs for National Academy of Sports Medicine, who most people know simply as NASM, or like a lot of people like to call it, NASM. And
Yes.
Michael, as you had mentioned, I'm coming up in September. It will be my 30th year in the fitness industry. My career had started in collegiate sports, found my way into fitness, which was intended to be a temporary in between while I was interviewing for the career that I wished to pursue. And before I knew it, I fell in love with the industry, have worked in a couple of different capacities, but it's been incredibly fulfilling.
So let me ask you this, David. I we were at a function recently. It was, I mentioned, it was Kathleen's function, and it was at Beyond Active.
Hmm.
I think it was then that I remember you when we were just sitting around talking. You mentioned a little bit about the Bally's days. I think we
Sure.
even got on that topic a little bit. Bally Fitness, Bally. I had a
Bally Total
membership there, and it was, yeah, and I had a membership there, and this must have been, I want to say late '80s. It was
Uh-huh.
late '80s, and it was Bailey's Crossroads in Virginia.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I thought that that club was going to make it another 30 years.
Yeah.
When did you come on with Bally's, and how did those days with Bally's set the stage for where you are now?
Oh, sure. It was 1996, September of 1996.
Okay.
I had come out of grad school, was in the process of interviewing, and Bally was growing rapidly as more and more focus and attention was put towards fitness. Most of your major cities around the country, there was Bally Total Fitness and maybe a few independent gyms. But if you wanted a health club membership, more than likely, you at a minimum toured a Bally Total Fitness. So, uh,
Yes, yes.
yeah, I had come on during that time, and as you talk about that, that from an industry perspective, it is quite remarkable to think of the evolution of the health club industry over the past 30 years. When you would join a Bally Total Fitness back in the day, typically you were signing an agreement for a 3-year commitment that would eventually evolve into a dues cycle. And the thought was back then there really weren't many home gyms or other options out there. But if exercise was going to become a component of your life, you were typically buying that membership, committing to 3 years, and participating in cardiovascular fitness, some selectorized small little free weight areas, very group X based racquetball courts and swimming pools and a variety of other options. But the landscape was quite different than what we see today.
Yeah, quite different. And that, now that memory serves, I remember we were talking about the evolution of the that model being locked into a 3-year contract, and then
Yeah.
you're fast forwarding now to 2025, that the way in which people pay for their gym memberships is distinctly and decidedly different. And when was that transition from that locked in model to a more flexible model? I would imagine the industry felt that that was a big risk. Maybe that's why they hesitated to transition out of that.
Without question. And when you think about the fitness trend in the mid 90s, more and more people were committing to fitness as a component of their life, but it wasn't the community element that we see today. It was a you go to the gym to get on a treadmill and get 30 minutes of cardiovascular exercise typically, or you were going to a class. At some point, probably in the mid 2000s, is when there were organizations that came out that started going month to month. And that changed things quite a bit. The thought was in the mid 90s, if you did not have an agreement with a member, that people would fall off after 3 months and they would never come back again, or maybe they take a couple of years and then make another decision to come back in. And that business model was not sustainable without having that particular commitment. So it was quite shocking when you did see some of the organizations come out and advertise that month to month. And the thought was, from an industry perspective, that this just was not going to be a model that would be repeatable ultimately, and
Yes.
that we would see moving forward into the future.
Now, the personal trainer side to this, because that's integral to, of course, a gym's success for many reasons. What was it like back then? And in my mind, I'm thinking about how incredibly important the National Academy of Sports Medicine is, NASM, to the world of personal trainers and gyms in general. But what was it like back then? And was some of what you were experiencing in those early days, is that what provided the desire to eventually come on board with NASM?
Yes. This is a great question, and younger people find this hard to believe. But when I started in 1996, personal training was pretty much non-existent.
All
Certainly
right,
for
wait a second. Jess, how old were you in 96?
I was not born yet by 2 years.
Oh, awesome. I don't say that to call you out. I say that as more of like longingly appreciate the fact that
Yeah.
you weren't born then. I love
yes,
I was just becoming a thought.
about 10 years ago, I was in a club, and I was talking to a salesperson there, and I was heavily involved in sales training and all kinds of different components when I was with Bally, and was sharing, some of my experience. And she said, "How do you know so much about this?" And I said, "Well, I started in the fitness industry in 1996." And she said, "Oh my God, that was the year I was born." And that's when it really dawned on me that this has been a considerable time in this industry, and I'm not as young as I think I am at times. But in 1996, and at that period of time, Bally had close to 400 clubs throughout the country, and personal training was not thought of as a viable option. It was viewed at the time as being something that was only applicable to the very, very wealthy, or folks that were involved in athletics. And just didn't fit from a business model perspective. What we did have at Bally were some independent contractors that would work in some of our facilities around the country that started developing a decent book of business during that period of time, found enough clientele, and we provided them with an atmosphere to where they could train those individuals. And then progressively, what we saw was in the Florida market in particular, was that they took some of these independent contractors and found some more and started building a decent business in that model. And so what happened with Bally then is that we went forth and implemented a program, and it was probably around 1998 that we did so, modeling a lot of what we saw in the Florida market and started implementing around the country. I will say there are two things that stand out during this period of time. The first thing was that the majority of clients that were securing personal training services were looking for programming support and assistance. Just bought a membership to a health club. For a lot of people back in that period of time, that was the first health club that they ever belonged to. And so they felt like, hey, I need somebody to show me what to do and hold me accountable. So it was a lot of basic programming, a lot of spotting and cueing, a lot of motivation and accountability that was tied into the model. Then during my tenure at Bally, we bought Crunch in 2001, I believe it was.
Really?
And at that time, we bought Crunch. They had the bulk of their clubs were in New York. They had one in Miami, one in Los Angeles, one in San Francisco, one in Atlanta, I think it was. But the majority of it were these iconic clubs in New York City. And they had built a personal training model that was incredibly profitable and popular. And so a lot of the motivation in buying Crunch was to learn their systems and then implement them around 400 to 500 clubs throughout the country. So upon acquisition, I spent 6 weeks out in New York City with the individuals that had developed and run that program. And really, it opened my eyes to what personal training could be, how it could be implemented, and how it could achieve the goals from a membership perspective, ultimately, in getting people to where they aspire to be from a fitness perspective.
Now, so back in that point in time, and my own personal experience with having been I owned a fitness camp when I was on the SWAT team. Don't laugh at the name, but our name, it ultimately became Drop Zone Ultra Fit Boot Camp, but the very first name out of the gate was Pound Killer Fitness, building muscle, killing fat. People loved it, and people from the community gravitated toward it. We were working out outside under a gazebo, and they were being instructed by myself and a partner. Both of us were avid fitness enthusiasts, and I had military experience, and was a lifelong athlete and all that. But there was no certification,
Yeah.
which is risky. because there's no standardization at that point. When did the personal training side of this business start to really get galvanized and become cohesive and start to require organizations like NASM?
So that's an interesting point. I'm gonna go back on the name of
Okay.
your organization first, uh, because it ties back into what I was talking about when I was part of the team that had acquired Crunch. There were a number of different things that we learned during that period of time, but there are two guys actually that ran that program, a guy named John Mitchell and another guy named Randy Humola, that are just, on the Mount Rushmore of personal training. Both could potentially have a stake there because they learned amazing things and ran a wonderful program. There are two things that they did that I thought were incredibly interesting and so compelling to their membership base. They had boxing rings in all of their gyms. And this was something that we had never considered from a Bally Total Fitness perspective. But what I learned is that everybody, it really didn't pertain to their age or their gender or their athletic experience or their goals or motivations or different things along those lines. They all loved putting hand wraps on, putting gloves on, punching
Yes.
into a bag, doing kicks. This was something that was such a drive for personal training. And they hired people that had experience into this space. And it really opened up my eyes to the fact of um, people are looking for more than the treadmill, the selectorized equipment, and the basic workouts. They want to feel like they're accomplishing something. And boy, oh boy, do they love hitting a bag? Do they love being in the ring? And that was
Yes.
really interesting, where the viewpoint before that period of time was that anything that was potentially intimidating in a club environment, don't put it in or hide it. And this was eye-opening that people really wanted that experience of something that felt somewhat military-like, somewhat
Yeah.
sports-like, something that they would never
Authentic.
think of doing before. Yes, so that was quite interesting. Um, your question now, going back into education standards. So as personal training started to grow within the US around the period of time that I was talking about, those late 90s years, early 2000s, there was now became a big hiring push out of a lot of organizations to find personal trainers. And certification, though it's not required from a United States perspective, it is in most other countries, but it's not required. It's not a licensed profession. There are not regulations and registries that are set up to manage personal training bases and regulations tied to them. Majority of employers at that period of time said, okay, we need to find certified personal trainers. So this was in the area that I was in at the time. Eventually, in my Bally years, we used to maintain right about 5,000 personal trainers. We would start the year at 5,000, end the year at 5,000. There were many years that we'd hire 10,000 during that period of time. So that churn, that turnover that we
Very true.
experience today has always somewhat existed. It has peaks and valleys. But we were hiring trainers, and we had a list of a variety of different education institutions that we approved as being certification providers. My relationship with Bally Total Fitness came as a result of some labor regulations that became had a critical component within the fitness industry, but really dictated how personal trainers could be coded as employees from a U.S. federal as well as a state by state perspective, and how they could be treated and how they could be managed. The reason I bring that up is that we went from a system, and most organizations at the time went from a system to where we could put personal trainers on a draw system, similar to a sales type of position, to where they were given unlimited prospecting hours, and without going into all the boring details, but you could manage a personal trainer without a tremendous amount of risk on your bottom line, to where they could develop their business, they could prospect independently, and then ultimately be paid out primarily from session pay. When that changed, we had to, as an organization, get very selective of who we were hiring into our club positions. So we spent considerable time, resources, and investment in determining who were our best personal trainers and looking at it from the perspective of who sold the most sessions, who serviced the most sessions, but what are the customer service scores that are coming out of this? How long was their tenure, et cetera, et cetera. And in doing so, what we found was that the NASM personal trainer within every single market was by far the number one person within these markets, and the person from an education perspective that we wanted to pursue. So my relationship with NASM became much closer at that period of time, where it became a, how do I find these people? How do I take my existing employees, get them into NASM education? And what is NASM providing that is producing this employee that far and away is our best in this particular space? And so what I found over time was that education was superior, and it was also a lot of practical knowledge that helped give a personal training the tools to learn how to assess and program, and how to create an experience for a membership base that was going to be considered valuable. And so those were very big components. The other thing that it did was it gave the personal trainer confidence. And this is what I found over many years within the industry, is that so many personal trainers would go through a certification process and come out and go, okay, I know how to put together a program, but how do I sit in front of a potential client and pitch them on a 16-session package and ask for a commitment of $1,000? And that was very challenging, and tends to be challenging for a lot of people that want to pursue, have the ambition to be a personal trainer. So it gave me a confident trainer. It gave me a trainer that was prepared and ready for every component within the business, and how to hit the ground running, how to develop success quickly. And that assisted with the tenure of that employee continuing to achieve and staying on within the business for a considerable period of time.
Yeah, that's amazing that you bring that up, David, because when I think about what makes anyone successful in any given endeavor, just generally, a couple things: confidence, but where does that confidence come from? Well, it comes from a lot of things. I mean, it can come from experience, but of course it comes from knowledge. It comes from the right training. It comes from a good system. And then it's interesting because there's, I don't know how many personal trainers approximately are there in the United States. Is there a stat?
Over 200,000.
Are there? Okay, so over 200,000. So that seems to be a daunting endeavor, to think about over 200,000 people, each with their own lives and upbringings and backgrounds, and then somehow galvanizing that community to give them the best chance for success. And so this has to veer into other skill sets like communication, presentation, leadership. How does NASM help equip someone in those regards? Because if I have the knowledge but I don't have great communication, good system, if I don't know how to, like you said, pitch my value proposition, then I'm almost like a rudderless ship at that point.
Exactly. I'm going to go back on when I made a commitment to this industry. I had my first certification that I had pursued and achieved. I remember coming out of the testing environment. At that period of time, there was a practical component. I had to go to Indianapolis. I had to go through all these practical assessments that were done, and then a written test associated with it. I remember walking out thinking to myself, I'm no better prepared to be a personal trainer in a traditional health club environment than I was when I started. Now, I learned how to do blood pressure. I learned how to do a Monarch bike test back then. I've never seen a Monarch bike at a health club. I had to do incredible memorizations when it came down to assessments, but also the communication that would be expressed back to a client. In most cases, this would be in a clinic environment, not in a traditional health club environment. I had to memorize all kinds of math equations tied into METs that could be simply done within a computer environment, not necessarily applicable. So there was a lot that I learned, and I valued that education, but no better prepared to develop a program and coach a client through a system at that period of time. And so going back on that, what NASM did a wonderful job of and continues to do a great job of. Our CPT is coming up on its 8th version. We are continually taking this gold standard program and adding in materials and bringing new subject matter experts into the space, knowing that the evolution has not slowed down. So with that, we have added a lot of content that applies to the science, but it's how you go forth and communicate that science, how you integrate that into a session, how do you create the value, but then also a lot of material tied into how do you, it's somewhat of an old-fashioned term, but how do you prospect? How do you engage with a client? When you have an opportunity to set up a complimentary workout, a sample session, a new member first workout, something to that degree, what are the components? How do you create value associated with them? How do you communicate effectively throughout? And how do you do things safely and effectively to where somebody comes out of that session and recognizes the fact of, I can work with this particular individual and I can get to my fitness goals, and I can do this in an environment where fitness is going to be enjoyable, it's going to be fun, and it's something I'm going to look forward to.
Yes, absolutely.
I've learned what comes with 30 years, and let me just bring up this point, Michael. What comes with 30 years in this industry, and it's never changed, is that very often we communicate with a member and we say, well, you need to follow these protocols, because if you don't, what happens is membership starts in January and boy, people get injured. And when you get injured, you never come back into the clubs. I never saw a lot of injuries in this industry. I never saw them. And what I did see though, was that you would have a member, let's go back, we're coming up on January, that joins in January and goes, boy, oh boy, this is going to be the year. This is my New Year's resolution. I'm finally going to commit to this. My doctor, my wife, my husband keeps getting on my case, all of these different things. I'm going to exercise. And so they come in and they get on a treadmill and they go, I'm going to fight through this, and I'm going to commit to running for 30 minutes on this treadmill, and it's no pain, no gain, and all of this. What happens very, very quickly is exercise dread. And it is the biggest killer, in my opinion, when it comes down to fitness and exercise. They are participating, but they're despising the experience. It's rough, it's challenging. They have a sedentary body that is not ready and prepared for 30 minutes on that treadmill. There's nothing about the experience that they like other than the feeling of accomplishment at the end. And what would steadily happen over time is that people find excuses. Oh, I got to work late today. Oh, you know what? I'm not feeling well this morning. And oh, the weather is terrible. Oh, all of these different excuses. And so what would happen is in January, we go from 3 days a week to 2 days a week to 1 day a week, and then you don't see them in February. That was the killer to me. Creating an environment within exercise that can be fun, enjoyable, and it can involve progressions, new types of equipment, and modalities, participating in classes, just things that are going to stimulate excitement and fun are really the keys to me within fitness. And it's a fitness professional's job to understand that client, create those progressions and regressions, build them into a program, but don't make it stale and stagnant. Consistently evolve and ensure that the experience itself is one that is fulfilling.
Yes.
So I have a question for you, David.
Yeah, go ahead, Jess.
Just a quick question. So have you, in your experience, found that there's a specific timeline, or if someone does commit to the gym for X amount of time, that they almost enter a sort of flow state and it doesn't become the dread and it becomes just part of a routine? Is there a specific kind of timeline that you've seen in your experience?
60 to 90 days. But here's the terrible thing. It's much like muscle atrophy. I thought when I was going through education and training is that you can train your legs every other day and have giant quads and hamstrings and be incredibly fit. You break your leg, you put on a cast and take it off a month later, and the muscle has just atrophied to such a high degree, and it's hard coming back. It's similar within fitness. You want to create an environment where it's as natural as brushing your teeth, right? To where every morning you wake up or whenever you finish up work, it just feels like your body is ready and looks forward to that experience. And that to me is a 60 to 90 day period of time. What's terrible about this experience is you see so many people that get regimented, and perhaps they're regimented for multiple years. They go on vacation, they take a week off, something to that degree. And it's hard getting back into that flow though. So it doesn't matter how long that flow has been going. It's the same thing with nutrition, right? Eating clean, getting yourself to a point where you feel like, okay, I've finally gotten to this point. You ease off on that a bit. You start eating some of those foods you avoided. It's hard to go back into it. So yes, great question. In terms of a period of time, it's not a couple of weeks. To me, it's that 2 to 3 month period. But boy, oh boy, be careful when you do go on those vacations or take the holidays off, different things to that degree, because it will be a bit more challenging in a lot of cases than you think it's going to be getting back into that flow.
Yeah, that was a great question. What I was thinking when I was listening to you, David, is I was thinking about the word fun, and in the context of personal training, yes, but there's been this proliferation with group personal training where you have a personal trainer but leading a group. And I read recently that there are many, let's say, big box gyms, maybe even full service, that are, from the vantage point of this author of this article, perfectly suited to become sort of the next generation of boutique group personal fitness hubs, because they have the facility to do it, they have the rooms to do it. Do you see that as being a trend as we head into 2026?
Yes.
Adding more of that group personal training aspect?
Yes. But if you asked me that same question 10 years ago, I would have said yes. It surprises me that we have not seen more growth and development in this area. When you think of the advantages that it provides, you think about personal training, a majority of clubs, 5 to 10%, 10% being a max in most situations of the membership base is engaging in personal training. It's not cheap. There's an investment that goes into it. And a lot of the business development and sales and marketing of a personal training is convincing somebody that this investment into health and getting to these goals that they've not been able to achieve for a long period of time is worth that particular investment. Most people, when they're starting an exercise program, would rather be doing it with a friend, a coworker, a family member, to where there is that small little community as you're becoming a part of a gym. So that is a natural fit along those lines as well. I had somebody who's I was asked the question and I deal with a lot of operators on a regular basis. And I remember hearing this a couple of years ago, and they had said the reason that they feel like small group personal training hasn't grown as much as one would expect it to, especially with all the advantages that it has, is that it requires more sales. So we brought up before that very often the personal trainer really struggles with the marketing and the sales and the price presentation and the overcoming objections and the really I don't want to say strong push, but the communication in such a way to where somebody understands the value and makes the decision. And they said to me that even though small group personal training is at a much less price point, which should be an easier sale, for a personal trainer that is creating their own small groups, now they got to sell to 4 people instead of 1. And
Yeah.
and that's a bit challenging in that scope. I always think paired personal training too, when you look at couples or friends or different things along those lines, has made a lot of sense. So I am seeing more from the big box franchise, high value, low price, that didn't put a lot of focus and attention towards personal training, starting to do so, and also trying to create those pre-established small groups where a trainer is assigned, and let's say a personal training manager or an operations manager is in charge of selling the seats, we'll call them, into those small groups.
I love that. As we think about this, sort of the evolution of fitness, because obviously it's ever evolving. In sometimes in sort of there's a micro movement, not necessarily a macro movement, but the there's a proliferation now, as we know, of wellness equipment, wellness modalities. I mean, I was just on with Fit Athletic, who is in our patented Halo Red, which is the only five sensory, or it's the only full immersion red light therapy and halo therapy. But we're seeing gyms across the country, Crunch being one of them, because I was just on recently with Undefeated Tribe,
Mhm.
and I was having them talk about how they layer in wellness, and they're creating recovery rooms. They used to stick it in a hallway, and it was kind of
Yeah.
like a stepchild, but they now know that that's not the way to do it. But my question is, personal trainers, in my estimation, are, because of their level of education, their commitment, always engaging with various members. To me, it would seem that one of the better ways to get adoption of wellness equipment when you bring it in would be to have personal trainers help to lead that charge through
Mhm.
education, through interaction. What do you think about that, David?
I completely agree. I mean, the role of the personal trainer has evolved to such a high degree. I talked about in the mid '90s when it and late '90s for that matter, when it started to develop. It was it was spotting and queuing and creating a basic program and telling people what they didn't know ultimately. And the expectations now from the membership base, the potential client, the existing clientele, are have elevated considerably, to where now a personal trainer is really expected to deliver a comprehensive experience, both from a direct session perspective as well as outside of the gym, or even getting those workouts in and developing the programming and the tracking associated with them when they're not particularly training. I may train where before it may have been, hey, I train 3 days a week with my personal trainer. That's when I go to the gym. Now they're training 2 days a week, but they're coming to the gym 5 or 6 days, and they're wearing their wearable and they're doing all of their data tracking. And there's also an expectation of, what should I be doing when I'm not working with you? What should I be doing outside of the gym from a cardiovascular, a stretching perspective, etc. And now that comprehensive wellness has been added in. What do you think of red light? What do you think of cold plunges? What about vibration? Should I get one of these? Should I sit in the Normatec boots? All of these are questions and components that are now expectations for that fitness professional to deliver. So yes, they need to be well versed, and the nutrition element that's a component in it. And there is a very specific scope of practice associated with personal trainer, to where they can't go forth and be writing up menu plans and different things to that degree. But what they can do is to be providing a level of understanding and expertise when it comes down to foods, and when they are particularly eating, and having an understanding of supplements, and that component of, which is an incredibly important component in terms of reaching goals. So yes, a much deeper understanding is required to be a successful fitness professional, currently, and even more so going into 2026.
Yeah, I love that. I don't. You might have papers covering your mic or something, because it sounds a little.
Oh,
It sounds a little muffled.
sorry.
Um, that's okay. So, because the reason I asked that, David, is I think about our conversations every day, and what we labor through is the adoption from members of this equipment. And if you're going to bring recovery equipment in, I've always long thought and known just inherently that personal trainers are certainly uh, a key influencer with, you know, creating this environment where someone who's in your gym is going to take a holistic approach to advancing their health span through fitness, like you said, nutrition, and then the wellness equipment that a lot of them just walk past. Do you find, with that in mind, or are there gyms and organizations that incentivize personal trainers? Do they or not? Because I don't see a lot of personal trainers, to my knowledge, that will highlight the wellness equipment, because that's an important part of an overall healthy, well balanced approach to
It
health span.
It is. The good ones do it. There are some gym environments too where they'll have a fitness professional that will man during off hours in a recovery studio. There are some that add that in as a component to a personal training package, to where, hey, when you buy into personal training and you're a current client, you also have, as part of that, access into the recovery room. So there are some incentives associated with it. There's a real interesting concept, Michael. It's existed for a long period of time, and it's somewhat understandable. A personal trainer that, once again, we talked about, so many do have that challenge sometimes with confidence and asking for an $800 or $2,000 commitment, different things to that degree. There's also, a long historical mentality of, hey, if I start introducing some of these other components, and there's all kinds of, unbelievable technology that exists out there, and different elements of services that are provided, different things to that degree. There's somewhat of an old school mentality of, well, if they end up paying for that service, or they do this particular assessment outside of the gym, that those are dollars going there, and they may not need me ultimately. They may come back and they're taking those dollars that would go into their renewal package, and they're putting them towards something else, and I may need to find another client for that time shift, different things like that. It's an archaic philosophy ultimately when you think about the client that is investing in personal training, and even looking at it from a membership perspective, where they're making this commitment to get to their goals. Now, their goals have changed considerably. What once was, I want to be 20 pounds lighter, I want to fit into this dress, this pair of jeans, different things to that degree. It's much more comprehensive now. I want more energy. I want to be able to compete in a 5K. I want to feel when I go to work that I have energy and enthusiasm, and I move better. I want to sleep better. I just read this book on longevity. I want to extend my lifespan and my health span and different things to that degree. So those are all components. So the great fitness professionals out there are understanding the other components that are going to get them to the goal. And they're not fearful of the fact of, oh my gosh, well, if somebody starts doing these other things, maybe they're going to scale back on training with me ultimately, and it's going to affect my business.
So with that in mind, David, do you, and maybe it's already there, but I don't know, is there curriculum either is available or perhaps on the horizon? And if not on the horizon, do you see curriculum being added in that relates to not just knowledge about how to train and obviously exercise science, but knowledge about wellness, so that when a trainer's in a business, they can talk confidently about the wellness? Because the reason I ask is all these gyms are adding wellness equipment, so why not then have curriculum commensurate with what a gym would have
Absolutely.
Inside the box?
Absolutely. We have, when you talk about wellness education, there are components of it that are in our CPT program that continue to evolve within it. We have a certified wellness coach, which is an outstanding certification.
This is fantastic.
Absolutely. Awesome. And understanding the landscape and the need. And what we're finding is that there are personal trainers that really understand the marketability of that and the service, the additional services that can be provided. So we see that component, but we also see a very big component of folks that are going through this process that never worked in a gym before, that were never a personal trainer, but they are pursuing wellness careers and are gravitating to us for that particular education. And then what we have within NASM, and it's evolved from a technology perspective and just evolved with the times, but we have a massive podcast network, and a lot of the focus is towards wellness in there. And we do all kinds of blogs, and we have continuing education that is continually coming out that addresses those components. 10 years ago, you really wouldn't have said fitness and wellness, really.
Right.
I mean, there was fitness and it was what is wellness? What is that all about?
Right.
Lifestyle, that type of thing. And now you hear so much of fitness and wellness. So when we talk about our professionals very often, it is fitness and wellness that we're addressing, because it's so much more ultimately than just what is traditionally classified as fitness. And it's critically important.
Yeah, it is amazing. I will say, go ahead, Jeff. Do you have a question?
I was just going to say, you've mentioned a couple different fitness trends and how it's evolved. And I was just curious, what sort of trends do you think don't get enough attention and which ones get too much attention in your opinion and are maybe a little bit of a facade?
Well, no. And that's a great question as well. I'm going to go back on something, because when you think about additional components into personal training, we have two historically just phenomenal specializations. One is corrective exercise specialist. The other is performance enhancement specialist. And to give you an idea, 100% of the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, and Major League Soccer have at least one professional on staff with one or both of those credentials. And very often it's the vice president of performance, head athletic trainer, person who's in charge of the department that has them. I always bring that up because that's been organic. That's not been anything that NASM has ever marketed to or pushed or been a part of this conference, that conference, or whatever. They're pursued because they're considered best in class. Both are really, really important elements, and not just for athletes. Ultimately, when you think about corrective exercise, for example, we brought up that traditional person that's been sedentary for the last couple of years and now is going to pursue their fitness goals, and understanding the body from an injury prevention perspective, but understanding that any discomfort that goes along with movement can be addressed effectively. And it does not need to be done in a physician's office or a clinic for that matter, but understanding the body to recognize, okay, we need to address this with flexibility and we need to address that with strength. And this is going to make that experience much more better. Also, from a performance enhancement perspective, knowing we talked about the boxing ring and crunch. Like, people don't just want to get to their goals. They want to live life, and they want to be able to, and it could be as simple as picking up their grandkids and playing around in the park with them, to I've always wanted to do a 5K. I've always wanted to do a triathlon. We have seen, and it's not going away in terms of these adventure races that are going on. And now you've been seeing, oh my gosh, it is just killing it. But people want more than just getting to their fitness goals and looking and feeling better. They want to do something to where they're competing, they're active. I haven't played tennis in 10 years. I used to play basketball. I used to do these type of things. So being able to integrate things within programming that are going to help people's speed, agility, and quickness, all the while keeping them injury-free, making the experience enjoyable, and let them start experiencing things within athletics or outside of the traditional gym environment to where they're comfortable and they can be successful.
That's awesome. David, the reality of having you on the show is there's this internal desire to just want to keep you on here and give you insights on every possible thing that we could ask a question about. So with that in mind, I did say that on the last third, maybe we're a little bit more inside now. I wanted to do something different. We haven't done it before on any of the episodes, and that's because we have your experience, your brain, your insight, and the time is now. I wanted to have Jess pull some questions out of a bag. These are some random questions that you didn't know we were going to ask, but I was just eager to see if we could get some of your insights and maybe we could just chat about it. So Jess,
I look forward to this.
See if you could dip into our question box for Mr. David Van Daff. By the way, do you let people call you DVD?
I don't think anybody in this industry has called me David for at least 15 years.
Okay. All right. So we get to call you DVD, which is great because in our company, I'm called MSP because Michael Shane Parrish, MSP, and because we have a lot of Michaels, and then of course we had JT, Jess Torres now. So, all right, JT, MSP, and DVD. Jess, fire away. Let's have at it.
No, I love it. So DVD, one of my first questions is, as someone that is still in the beginning stages of their career, I'm curious for you to kind of think back to the beginning stages of your career. And if you could give yourself a piece of advice at that point with all the knowledge you have today, what would it be?
That is a great question. There's so much that's talked about finding your passion and pursuing your passion. My track was, my career path was never going to be in fitness, and I found myself getting into fitness, and as I mentioned in the beginning, a year in, found that it was incredibly fulfilling and something that I didn't want to veer away from, especially once I got to that 10-year point and it became okay, I'm going to need to figure out if I'm going to make a move here or if this is going to be my career. There's one thing I've learned, and I think it's best expressed within there's a term, it's a Japanese term called ikigai. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, but it is that combination of what we talked about before, which is finding your passion. And if you can make money with your passion, then you've really got a fulfilling and fruitful career in front of you. But it goes beyond that, because it takes components of it's that combination of what you love, what the world needs, which from a fitness perspective, those in this industry, like we're fighting a battle ultimately. And the work that we're doing is ultimately contributing to the health of not only our country, but our world. When you think about from an NASM perspective, we're a very international organization. But it also adds in that component of what you're good at. And I think that's really, really important. And something that I can look back on now from my career is, okay, I can do this. This is fulfilling. I'm also good at it. And then ultimately what you can be paid for. So it's what you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, and what you can be paid for. I'm really lucky because early on in my career, I didn't think through all of those components. But when I learned about this later, I was able to check all of those boxes and look back on my career and go, okay, that was a good decision.
That's awesome.
So what were you thinking about venturing into before the fitness industry? Where did you think your life was going to be?
I was a graduate assistant at the University of Tennessee in the football department. And one of my primary responsibilities was once a week, we had NFL general managers and scouts that would come in, spend the day watching film, being out in practice. I wasn't in a coaching capacity, so I took care of those individuals and developed relationships with them over the course of 2 years. When I made the decision of getting out of college sports, I really wanted to work in the NFL and was in the process of actually interviewing for what were interesting positions, but primarily that is still that internship level and be able to build up and grow from that perspective. So that's what I was in the process of pursuing. What I had learned in working in college sports for the better part of 7 years was that this was not going to be long-term fulfillment for me. So I was looking for something different at that stage. And then by becoming a part of the fitness industry, by entering in, I found new levels of fulfillment. And by the way, I also found that I didn't need to work 7 days a week, 90 hours a week, and no holidays and all. I started finding that, hey, this is a career that I can balance some other things that are also fulfilling in life for me, and become a fan more so than being directly involved.
Absolutely.
And by the way,
Really
a fun thing to do, because I just did it recently. There was a job that I had interviewed with the Kansas City Chiefs, and they had all but told me the job was mine. And the son of a very, very famous college football coach came into play at the last minute, whose father was very, very connected with ownership and management, who ended up taking that role. So it's been really interesting for me to watch that. And the general manager of the Kansas City Chiefs at the time had said, hey, this is where we're at and this is what happened. And so what I've been able to do is really follow that person's career and kind of match it to my career ultimately, and kind of balance it. Well, if I would have gone into that position, what would my career have looked like? Now with AI, just for fun, I was able to take that position and that particular person and take then my role into it and say, what would my career look like now if I would have started into that position. So anyway, that's a fun thing. If anybody wants to do that, throw that into AI someday.
That's
Yeah,
so
AI is,
fun. I guess. Go ahead, Michael.
no. AI is a lot of fun. It's both. You know, AI. I view it in its proper context as an enhancer to what we do. It certainly enhances a lot of what we do. And there's some
No,
downsides, but there's a lot of upsides.
no
I think
question
that's a great
about it.
exercise. I'm going to try that, by the way.
Well, it's interesting, and going back on AI and technology, when people talk about, oh my God, could this disrupt the personal training business, the fitness business, et cetera, et cetera, that live component, that interpersonal relationship, that it's always been the key to personal training. When search engines came out and the internet started thriving, we talked about in 96, this was really, really small back then. The thought was, oh my gosh, people are just going to find their own workouts online. They're not going to need a fitness professional ultimately. So that happened. And then all of the different apps that came out, everything within our industry that has advanced the industry and provided more education to the member. It hasn't changed our industry at all. I think from a fitness professional perspective, it's only grown progressively over time. So now you don't need to teach people as much in terms of basic exercise knowledge and components that are going to be a part of their programming. But people need that relationship. They need that fitness professional guiding them, advising them. And it's no longer so much about accountability, but it's somebody who's really going to push. It's grown within the group exercise community. It's grown within the personal training components. And heck, when we were going through the midst of COVID and they said everybody was going to build out their home gyms and never come back to a community, nothing could be further from the truth. Everybody came back. Everybody missed it and gravitated to it, and it's never changed.
Talk about a slingshot. I mean, we're not, fitness is growing at a rate that it's never grown before.
Absolutely,
it's amazing. You think about it. So with that in mind, and so AI, it conjures up another thought. So and we'll wrap with this. Let's vision cast. Let's think about now we're heading into 2026. We've just talked about AI. We've talked about the historic set of challenges and problems that you're always going to find, no matter what the decade is, with just human nature and human tendency, the how we've evolved as personal trainers. What Jess mentioned the word trending earlier. As we vision cast into 2026, and then maybe over the next 2 to 5 years, David, what do you think the trending and trajectory looks like with the way in which fitness, wellness will continue to evolve?
Yeah, that's interesting. A lot of the things that we've talked about, I think, are going to continue to grow. Obviously, we talked about comprehensive wellness, holistic fitness and wellness, and these components that keep on getting added in. Wearables continue to grow and develop, and they're amazing. What went from a Fitbit now to is you can find hundreds that are out there in the market, and each one of them is telling us insight, both while we're exercising and what we're doing when we're not exercising, ultimately, all the way to glucose monitoring and beyond. So I think we're going to see those things grow. One of the things that we haven't talked about is weight loss medications. And this is changing our industry pretty considerably. Once again, when GLP-1s started to become a household name, it was a doom and gloom for the fitness industry. People are not going to need the gym because they're going to instantly lose weight, and nothing has been further from the truth. What we have seen a lot of is folks that have never stepped into a gym environment, never engaged with a fitness professional, et cetera, weren't comfortable in that particular type of environment. Now we're going on weight loss medications and starting to become comfortable. It was going through some early weight loss and getting more comfortable in their own bodies was the catalyst to them engaging within fitness. I'm frequently at conferences and listening to speakers, and I was over in Europe at FIBO last year, and there was an unbelievable presentation where they were talking about the weight loss medication market and how it's impacted food, ultimately in grocery stores and restaurants and all of those things, which is very, very interesting. But they also talked about travel and fashion. And this was a component that I thought was really, really interesting and took me by surprise. travel and fashion are growing increasingly because there are more people that weren't willing to engage in fashion and travel, and as a result of not being comfortable with where they were from a physical fitness perspective.
Yes.
Lose 10, 20, 30 pounds, and now they want to expand their life and gain more fulfillment in doing things that they weren't comfortable in doing before. Some of that affects to the gym. So from a personal training perspective, and from our responsibility as the National Academy of Sports Medicine, we've got an unbelievable course that came out very, very quickly that was tied into weight loss medications, understanding from a fitness professional perspective, considerations, programming guidance, all of these things that need to be an important component, because more and more the membership base of a health club is expanding to include folks that are currently on weight loss medications or have been a part of weight loss medications in the past.
Yeah, I love that. I had a conversation with Jeff Zweifel. I think it
Oh
was
yeah.
Second or third episode in a course, notwithstanding, because they have Miura, which is their
Mhm.
wellness approach. They're being Lifetime, and I know you guys do work with Lifetime.
Very close partner. Mhm.
Yeah, great partner. What an incredible organization, and
Oh,
then the work that Jeff did and his team did during his 25-year run there was nothing short of miraculous. And you would know as much as anybody because you were along for a lot of that ride and growth
old
as
enough
far
to
as
remember when they started.
yeah,
Yes,
that's
yes.
right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so but of course it's such a great point. Maybe that is the point. It's not just fitness anymore. It's fitness and biomarkers and GLP-1s, peptides, hormones, sleep, nutrition, wellness equipment, recovery equipment, because sometimes there's variations. That's what seems to me to be, and I guess if we're just wanting to do a plug, that the book recently that came out, um, what is it? What's the name of it? Is it Beyond Fitness, Wellness Without Walls? Is
Beyond
that
reps?
Yeah,
Beyond
yeah.
Reps? Yes. Jeff has a chapter in there about cutting through the silos, basically, and not looking at everything from that siloed approach, but how do we have this healthy, well-balanced approach to advancing lifespan and health span?
Well, and
Um,
they're the masters of community. Masters.
yes,
We're doing things now that are becoming far more mainstream, where you go into every club now and there are dedicated spaces. I mean, fitness and health clubs had the opportunity to become a third space. Back when Starbucks was making that popular, and they fully embraced it and developed it. The gym that I belong to, I'm an early morning guy. I go over there, I see the same people, I feel like a part of the community. I don't know their names. I see them, they know me, I know them. We see each other every day. And just this past Friday, and I'll give you an example. There's this fitness formula in Chicago, and Gail Landers, who does a phenomenal job with these clubs. But there are areas to sit. There's a fireplace there. There's all these things that would be so foreign back when I first started in the industry. But I went over for an evening yoga class. I had missed. I committed myself. I got to change things up. I got to start adding in a yoga class. Was scheduled to take one at 6 a.m. on a Friday. We got crazy weather. I had to go out and shovel instead. I missed it. But there was one in the evening time. And so I went over there in the evening time. And so I saw a lot of the gym that I typically don't see. This was at 5:30. And I go up to the area, by the fireplace, and they have live music going. And there's a bar there. I've never seen anybody manning, or it's not open in the morning, but people having some cocktails and celebrating afterwards, and somebody with a laptop over in the corner. And I know these areas exist, but to see a health club in an environment to where it's also a part of their social fabric, to
yes,
where and it's not just, the old Bally clubs used to have bars, but the thought was, they'd go through, a traditional Jane Fonda group exercise workout and have cocktails afterwards. This has changed to where this is a location to where they can get some work done in between workouts. They can go and socialize with friends, go listen to live music, do a wine tasting. All of these different components are so important now, and you see them in just a high percentage of the health club industry. Conscious efforts, building out spaces and creating that friendly community.
I love that because that perfectly describes wellness very succinctly. this this experience that touches you physically, mentally, emotionally, sometimes spiritually, socially, and what is wellness? You probably get 8 billion different definitions because that's how many people there are in this world. But really, isn't it that type of experience that
Absolutely.
yeah.
And Michael, I'd add in another change that I've seen progressively over time. When I started at Bally, we always had saunas and hot tubs and steam rooms traditionally in there. And the bulk of users of those services were just people that came over and they never worked out. They just want to sit in the hot tub, sit in the sauna. A lot of the older guys would be in there. It was always wherever I would go around the country. I mean, it was never the most fit exercise conscious people that were utilizing those. Now, what I see in health clubs are you go into any sauna, steam room, hot tub, cold plunge, everything like that. These are people that are serious about their fitness, where it was just an added component back then,
Yeah,
where it was like
that's a
people.
such a wow. You're exactly right. I mean, I just harken back to the Valley days
Yeah,
where this young kickboxer, super fit, super driven. I'm I'm just there lifting weights. I'm not going in there with Fred, George, and Willie.
yeah.
That seemed to be what it was. But you're right. I didn't really even thought about that. But yeah, you go now into wellness and recovery and steam rooms and saunas. You're having some of the fittest of the fit in there now.
You really are.
So
And the other thing, the free weight areas. When we built
yes,
gyms in the 90s and the 2000s, and we built beautiful gyms, and they were very strategic in terms of exercise placement. But boy, oh boy, you load up those front windows with treadmills and ellipticals, and that's what people are going to gravitate to. Hide the free weights, hide them. Put them
that's
in the
right.
corner. We used to build cages, these
Yes.
big, beautiful cages around them. And there was this feeling of just small percentage of males that are going to gravitate in there and they'll scare everything off. Nowadays, you go into any free weight area, and a lot of times it's front and center. It's so much bigger than it ever used to be. And look at the demographics: old, young, male, female, fitness level. It's all over the board. You would have told me 15 years ago, you would see the people that we're seeing in squat racks these days. It's incredible. What I see,
Yes.
yeah, what I see more when I go into a free weight area now, I look and I will see an equal percentage of male and female, and like I said, all kinds of different demographics and ages and such, and fitness levels, et cetera, et cetera. But it's 50-50. Where wasn't that long ago that it was big, strong guys that were focused on hypertrophy that would be back in that free weight area. Now it is a mixed bag, and it is so wonderful to see.
Yeah, I love that too because at the end of the day, those of us that are in the wellness world and we have, of course, amazing equipment. We're grateful that we do. The only 5 sensory breathing detox sauna, the only patented full immersion red light therapy and halo therapy solutions in the world, and we're grateful. However, what I love about what you're just saying is what science, exercise science, has done, and we fast forward. The One of the most important parts of a regimen that leads to maintaining and or let's say achieving higher levels of cellular health
Mm-hmm.
starts with exercise, and a big part of that is proper regimented weightlifting. It's
Yes,
such an important part of our cellular health, our longevity, and our health span. You can't replace it. It's a if you had to think of a pillar, it's going to be that fitness and weightlifting segment within that pillar. It's
no
so
doubt about it.
incredibly important.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, David, I'm so grateful that we had you on. I already knew going in that I'm thinking, man, we could have 10,000 questions for DVD, and we're gonna it's gonna necessitate another podcast later on down the road. So I'm grateful for your time. Honored to be able to call you an industry colleague and friend, and I thank you for your leadership. And as we close, as a leader in the industry, what are some parting thoughts that you'd like to bestow on our networks, folks like Jess that are newer in their career development. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share?
I'll share I've been on an audiobook binge this year, made a commitment this year, and I highly recommend it. I'm on my 26th book, so my workouts are consumed with audiobooks. Any chance I get, I gravitate to them, and have had a phenomenal year, just getting to a lot of material that I never would have been able to get to. There are a number of things that come to mind that have been very, very impactful from a leadership perspective. But one that if I could choose one that I really, really enjoyed, I went through John Wooden's Pyramid of Success. John Wooden, legendary basketball coach, and did this pyramid, 60s and 70s, and it was really the framework of his success as a coach. I've known about that pyramid for a long period of time, but one of the things that stood out on this pyramid is there's a foundation of industriousness and enthusiasm, and he talks a lot about it within his book, and it really. It really hit me in going through this audiobook here, because the industriousness is the one component that you're just kind of like, okay, what does that mean? That's hard work, but it's hard work and strategic planning. And I think that's critically important, is that everybody can work hard. But if you don't have a plan and an objective with tactics that are aligned to achieving that objective, that hard work can fall by the wayside. And in today's work environment, if your hard work is just returning emails and hopping on calls and just putting out fires continually without building and progressing, you're going to find yourself challenged in the environment that we have there. So the industriousness, the hard work, the strategic planning, and diligent planning, but also that enthusiasm and that zest for what you're doing. Those things for me were big. I passed those along to my son, and it really stuck out on something that I've known for a long period of time, but digging into that a bit, I thought it was really, really applicable. So if there was one piece of advice, include those into your regiment, and you will build upon that foundation and grow.
DVD, thank you so much. We appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon. What's an upcoming event that you might be going to? But maybe Q1.
Oh my gosh,
where are you going to be next?
It's interesting as we're coming to the year. So we brought up Kathleen Ferguson. She's got her career lab happening in January. Yes. There will be the HFA show is going to be amazing in San Diego this year. That'll be happening in March. Then you've always got FIBO over in Cologne, Germany, where if you haven't been to that, it's incredible and amazing there. That'll be happening in April, and sprinkle in some other things that are going on over the course of Q1. So live events never went away, and there's never been more of them these days, where there's a lot more no's than yeses these days, just from the perspective of you can only do so much, but there's some great ones that are out there.
Well, we're looking to seeing you very soon, perhaps at Career Lab, Kathleen Ferguson's event, or definitely HFA in San Diego. I mean, what a good spot to be. Thanks again, David, for your time. We really appreciate it. We're looking forward to perhaps having you on at some point, maybe in later 2026, because I know there's a lot more to talk about. But thank you so much. We appreciate it. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you so much, David.